You ever think back on your own education and realize there were certain teachers that were just different?
Oh, absolutely.
Not just good at explaining stuff, but really lit a fire in you.
The ones who made you want to learn more, even outside of class.
Exactly. Well, today we're diving deep into something that plays a huge role in shaping those amazing teachers.
We're looking at teacher professional development, but with a specific focus.
We're going behind the scenes of workshops.
Right. We all know teachers go to workshops, but what actually goes on in them?
And do they really make a difference in how teachers teach and how kids learn?
We've got some insightful analysis to dig into that covers both the high points of workshops and some of the trickier parts, too.
Yeah, the stuff folks don't always talk about.
Yeah.
So first things first, what exactly are we talking about when we say workshop? I mean, it seems like a pretty broad term.
It is a little broad, but for teachers, we're talking about a structured learning experience. Structured, it's got to have clear goals.
Yeah.
Usually focused on giving teachers new skills, updating their knowledge, that kind of thing.
Makes sense, but wouldn't that get boring fast, just sitting there being lectured at?
That's where the interactive part comes in. Good workshops don't just talk at teachers, they get them actively involved.
Okay, I see. Like learning by doing, not just listening.
Exactly.
So if I walked into, say, a workshop about using technology in the classroom.
You wouldn't just be hearing about the latest apps, you'd be using them, experimenting, troubleshooting.
Ooh, like a test drive before you unleash the tech on your students.
Exactly. Or, picture this. You're in a workshop on classroom management. It's not just theories and tips. You're role-playing.
Oh, wow. Pretending to deal with a chatty student or a kid who keeps refusing to do their work.
And getting feedback from other teachers, trying different approaches. Way more engaging than just reading a textbook, right?
Totally. Okay, so workshops sound like a lot more fun than I originally thought. But why all this emphasis on keeping teachers up to date? What's the big deal?
Well, think about how much the world of education is changing. New technology, new research about how kids learn.
It's like trying to drink from a fire hose. I struggle to keep up with the latest gadgets, and I'm not even teaching a classroom full of kids.
It's a lot to manage. So, workshops are this lifeline for teachers.
A way to keep their skills sharp, their knowledge fresh.
And to be honest, to avoid burnout too. Feeling confident you're on top of things makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. So the source material we're looking at digs into the benefits of workshops in detail. One thing that really stood out to me was that emphasis on hands-on learning, which we've already touched on. It makes total sense.
Right. Our brains aren't just empty vessels waiting to be filled. We learn best by doing, by making connections through experience.
Tell me and I forget, show me and I may remember, involve me and I learn.
That quote sums it up perfectly.
And I think that active involvement is what makes workshops so effective. It's not just about absorbing information, it's about integrating it, internalizing it, making it your own.
And when teachers can do that, when they feel ownership of the new ideas they're learning, that's when the real magic happens.
Yeah, because then they're not just going through the motions, they're genuinely excited to bring those ideas back to their classrooms.
Precisely. And another benefit the analysis highlighted is the power of collaboration.
Okay, so it's not just about teachers learning from the experts leading the workshop.
It's also about learning from each other, bouncing ideas around, getting different perspectives.
Sharing those aha moments and those, wait, how do I handle this moments? I love that.
It's like tapping into this collective wisdom.
Because let's be honest, no single teacher has all the answers.
Exactly. So bringing teachers together in a workshop setting.
It creates this space where they can learn not just from the facilitator, but from each other's experiences.
It's powerful stuff.
And then there's the access to experts that workshops often provide.
Right, you've got these leading researchers, experienced educators.
Folks who are really pushing the boundaries of what's possible in education.
And they're sharing their cutting-edge knowledge directly with teachers.
It's like a backstage pass to the world of educational thought leadership. I can only imagine how inspiring that must be.
It can be a game changer for teachers. Gives them that boost of confidence knowing they're on the cutting edge.
And then on top of all that, there's this concept the analysis really emphasized, reflective practice.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting.
Lay it on me. What's so special about this reflective practice thing?
So imagine a teacher goes to a workshop, learns about project-based learning.
Which, just for our listeners, means letting kids learn by working on real-world projects instead of just lectures and worksheets.
Right. So this teacher's inspired, but they don't just copy-paste what they saw in the workshop. They think, how can I adapt this to my students? my subject.
They're not just absorbing information, they're actively processing it, figuring out how to make it their own.
That's the heart of reflective practice. It's about taking a step back, critically examining your own teaching.
And then making intentional changes based on what you've learned.
And that's where the real impact lies.
It's not just about acquiring knowledge, it's about applying that knowledge in a way that transforms your teaching.
That's where the rubber meets the road. But of course, no system is perfect.
There's got to be a but coming, right?
Well, the analysis we're looking at doesn't shy away from the fact that there's some big challenges when it comes to workshops.
Let's not sugarcoat it. Spill the tea. What are some of the hurdles we need to be aware of?
Okay, first up, the one that probably resonates with anyone who's ever tried to learn something new.
I'm guessing it's time.
You got it.
Yeah.
Teachers are incredibly busy people. Finding time for anything extra, even professional development, can feel impossible.
I can only imagine. Between lesson planning, grading, meetings, when do they even sleep? And then, it's not just the time to attend the workshop.
Right. There's also the time to process what they've learned, to plan how they're going to actually use it in their classrooms.
It's a big commitment, and I can see how that could be a major obstacle for some teachers.
Especially for those already feeling stressed and overworked. So time is one biggie. Another challenge, the risk of that one-size-fits-all approach.
Ah, right, because what works for a teacher in, say, a big, well-funded suburban school
might be totally irrelevant for someone in a rural district with limited resources.
makes sense. Different kids, different communities, different challenges.
Exactly. It'd be like using the same lesson plan for a kindergarten class and a high school class.
Not gonna work. Okay, so time constraints. And the danger of assuming all teachers have the same needs.
Oh, and then there's this lack of follow-up support after the workshop is over.
Ooh, that's a good one. I've definitely been there with my own learning. I get all fired up about something new.
You join a gym, you buy all the fancy workout gear.
Exactly. But then life gets in the way, motivation fades.
And that treadmill ends up being a very expensive clothes rack.
Sad but true. So I'm guessing the same thing can happen with workshops.
Absolutely. Teachers get all these great ideas, but then they're back in the classroom facing the same old challenges.
And without some ongoing guidance, those new ideas kind of fizzle out.
They need that support system, that community of peers, to help them stay on track, troubleshoot problems.
To keep that momentum going. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Workshops, great idea in theory, but there's some very real challenges in making them actually work for teachers.
Right. But luckily, the source material doesn't just highlight the problems, it offers solutions too.
Okay, I'm all ears. What can we do to make workshops really work? How do we overcome these hurdles?
Well, that's what we're going to dig into next. And
Yeah.
I think you're going to like some of these solutions, especially given how you like to learn. Practical and personalized, right?
You know me too well. Hit me with those solutions.
You're right. You got to tailor it. And it's not just about the setting or the grade level the teachers work with.
It's about meeting individual teachers where they are.
Exactly. A brand new teacher just starting out is going to need different support than someone who's been in the game for 20 years.
Totally makes sense. It'd be like expecting someone who's never run a mile to suddenly train for a marathon.
Exactly. You've got to build up to that.
Yeah.
So tailoring content, differentiating, those are key.
What else did this analysis recommend? Any other strategies that jumped out at you?
Two things really grabbed my attention. Collaborative problem solving and teacher-led workshops.
Ooh, those sound interesting. Break those down for me.
So collaborative problem solving is basically this. You get a bunch of teachers together
Already sounds like fun.
and you have them focus on a challenge they all face. Could be anything. Student motivation, parent communication.
Classroom management, especially with all the disruptions these days.
Exactly. So instead of some expert saying, here's the solution, it's more like, okay, team, how do we tackle this together?
I love that. It's like crowdsourcing solutions from the people who actually live this stuff every day.
Right. And because the teachers were part of creating the solution, they're way more invested in making it work.
It's like that old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
I like that. And then teacher-led workshops. This is where things get really cool.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Paint me a picture.
Imagine a workshop where the person leading it isn't some big shot researcher.
It's one of their own.
Exactly. It's a fellow teacher who's figured out a way to, say, get kids excited about writing or make math more hands-on.
And they're sharing their strategies, their successes, even their failures along the way.
It's real, it's relatable.
And it builds this amazing sense of community among teachers. Like, we're all in this together.
Exactly. So those are some of the solutions the analysis highlighted. Of course, there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Every school, every group of teachers is different.
But the key takeaway is this. We need to be way more thoughtful about how we design and run workshops.
It's not just about stuffing teachers full of information. It's about empowering them to grow.
Right. And ultimately, that growth is what benefits the students most.
Okay, so before we get too deep into the weeds here, I want to pull back for a second and think about the listener.
Always good to bring it back to the folks at home.
Right. So we've talked about how workshops are supposed to help teachers keep up with the latest and greatest, especially when it comes to technology.
Which is evolving at a dizzying pace.
But that got me thinking, how do you even design a workshop for something that doesn't even exist yet?
Ooh, good question. It's like trying to teach someone how to use a smartphone that hasn't been invented yet.
Exactly. What did our source material have to say about that?
Well, it's tricky, right? You can't predict the future of tech, but what you can do is give teachers something even more valuable.
I'm all ears.
You can help them develop a mindset of adaptability.
So it's less about teaching the specific features of a certain app.
And more about giving them the skills to learn any new app, to figure out how to use it effectively in their classroom.
It's like instead of giving them the fish.
You teach them how to fish.
Exactly. So how do you actually do that? What would a future-proof tech workshop even look like?
Well, you'd probably focus less on specific tools.
And more on big picture thinking.
Exactly. You might have a workshop on, say, the ethical considerations of using AI in the classroom.
Okay, so instead of how to use ChatGPT to write lesson plans.
It's more like, whoa, AI is here. What does that mean for education?
And how do we make sure we're using it responsibly, ethically?
To actually benefit students, not just because it's the cool new thing.
Now that's a workshop I'd sign up for.
Me too. The point is, we need to help teachers become critical thinkers about technology. Not just users, but evaluators.
And that kind of thinking can apply to any new development in education, not just tech.
Absolutely. We need to equip teachers to handle whatever the future throws at them.
To be those adaptable, lifelong learners we all strive to be.
Exactly. And speaking of lifelong learning, let's bring it back to the listener one more time.
What are some key takeaways they can apply to their own journey, even if they're not standing in front of a classroom every day?
Well, I think it all comes back to that idea we've been dancing around. Lifelong learning.
Which isn't just some cheesy slogan, right? It's essential.
Especially these days. Things are changing so fast. If you're not learning, you're falling behind.
And that's true whether you're a teacher, a doctor, you name it.
Even podcast hosts.
Hey, we're trying. But what I really appreciate about this deep dive is that it's not all doom and gloom.
Right. It's not like, oh no, the world's changing. We're all going to be replaced by robots.
It's more like, okay, change is inevitable, so how do we equip ourselves to handle it?
And workshops, when they're done right,
Can be a fantastic tool for that.
they give people a space to try new things, to fail safely, to learn from each other.
And to get that support system, which we all need.
Right. None of us can do this alone.
Exactly. So, big picture, what are we taking away from all this talk about workshops?
I think the biggest thing is we need to move away from this one-size-fits-all model of professional development.
Like, stop assuming that the same workshop is going to work for every teacher in every situation.
Exactly. We got to be way more thoughtful about who we're designing for, what their specific needs are.
And how I can support them after the workshop is over.
Right. It can't just be a one-and-done thing. It's got to be part of a bigger culture of continuous learning.
And, this isn't just about teachers, right? This applies to anyone who's trying to learn and grow.
Absolutely. No matter what field you're in, the world's going to keep
You
changing.
better be ready to change with it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, dear listener, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of workshops,
We want to leave you with this. Never stop learning.
stay curious, stay adaptable, and never be afraid to try something new.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you today.
And until next time, keep those brains buzzing.